The sun beamed down on the golden lawns of the monarch estate in Ikoyi. Helicopters hovered overhead, capturing the moment from the sky as Nigeria's elite gathered in dazzling attire. Cars with diplomatic plates lined the boulevard, and security men in black suits stood at every corner, earpieces buzzing. Inside the marquee, a cascade of white orchids hung from the ceiling, interspersed with golden chandeliers. Waiters in crisp uniforms carried trays of exotic cocktails. The media called it the wedding of the century. Chief Adedeo Olamide was finally tying the knot after years of bachelorhood, and he was marrying none other than Adesoa Yuka, the stunning daughter of a former ambassador. As the wedding ceremony commenced, Pastor Jide's baritone voice echoed, "If there is anyone here who believes this union should not take place, speak now or forever hold your peace." And then it happened. "I object." The voice was weak but unmistakable. Gasps shot through the tent. Heads turned. A murmur rolled through the seated guests like a distant wave. Standing at the entrance was a barefoot girl, dusty, ragged, barely clothed. Her cheeks were sunken, her dress was tattered, but her eyes burned with something fierce. Security rushed forward. "No," Chief Adedeo said, raising a hand. "Wait." His eyes narrowed as he squinted into the distance. "Do I know you?" he asked slowly. "I'm Ifeoma. From Imo State. 10 years ago, you stayed in our village during the crisis. You promised to return for us. You said you'd help Mama. You gave me a necklace, called me your little star. Then you disappeared." The crowd murmured louder. Adesoa's face turned red. "What kind of madness is this?" The girl stepped forward. "My mother, Nena, lost her mind when you left. We waited for you. We begged. I ended up in Lagos. On the streets. Hungry. Forgotten." Chief Adedeo looked shaken. "Ifeoma. I thought you all left the village. I thought you were gone." "No," she said, her voice cracking. "We were there. Every day. Waiting." Adesoa turned to Pastor Jide, nearly shouting. "This is nonsense. A calculated distraction. Look at her, she's deranged." But Pastor Jide looked uncertain. He turned to Chief Adedeo. "Chief, is what she's saying true?" Chief Adedeo wiped his brow. "I did stay with a woman and her child during the insurgency. I was in hiding. She cooked for me, sheltered me. I made promises. I never returned." A gasp. Cameras flashed. Adesoa pulled off her veil. "You're humiliating me in front of the entire country." Alhaji Musa, seated in the front row, stood up and faced the guests. "We all have pasts. But what matters is how we face them when they return. And today, the past is here, in the form of this girl." Ifeoma reached into her dress and pulled out a faded photo. It showed her as a child, held tightly by a younger, bearded Adedeo. On the back, "To my little star. I'll return. Always." The wedding was abruptly paused. Chief Adedeo walked off stage. Cameras followed. Ifeoma was taken to a private lounge. There, over cold drinks and guarded silence, the billionaire sat across from the beggar girl. "I failed you," he admitted. "You and your mother. You saved us, then forgot us. Do you know what it's like to sleep under bridges?" she asked, tears forming. Chief swallowed hard. "I didn't know where to find you." "But you never tried," she replied. By evening, social media was ablaze. #ChiefWeddingCrash trended globally. Bloggers spun tales of hidden daughters and abandoned promises. Adesoa issued a cold statement through her PR team, "I refuse to be part of a charade." But Chief Adedeo didn't flinch. That night, he released a video. "I take full responsibility. I abandoned a child I once called my own. I've made billions, but what does it mean if I can't face the truth? He announced the cancellation of the wedding. Weeks later, Chief Adedeo flew Mama Nena from a psychiatric ward in Enugu to a top hospital in South Africa. He bought Ifeoma and her mother a home in Lekki. He enrolled Ifeoma in a prestigious private university. Her story became an inspiration, featured in newspapers and documentaries. She was no longer the beggar girl who crashed a billionaire's wedding. She was now Ifeoma Olumide, the phoenix who rose from betrayal. A year later, at a youth empowerment summit in Abuja, Ifeoma stood on stage. Don't wait to be chosen. Sometimes you must crash the door and remind the world that you matter, she said. In the front row, Chief Adedeo watched silently, his eyes full of pride and regret. And so, from scandal grew redemption. From shame, legacy. Because sometimes, it takes a beggar girl to remind a billionaire what wealth truly means. Following the viral wedding scandal, other forgotten promises began to surface. Young men and women, abandoned by powerful figures during the crises of Nigeria's past, began to speak out. Ifeoma became a symbol, a spark that ignited a movement. She was invited to speak in schools, churches, and conferences. Her foundation, Little Star Rising, provided scholarships and mental health support for displaced children. One afternoon, she visited a community in Makoko. Your beginning is not your end, she said to a group of barefoot children, echoing words Chief once told her. Mama Nena, now stable and joyful, often sat by the window of their Lekki home, humming old folk songs. Your father would be proud, she sometimes told Ifeoma. Do you forgive him? Ifeoma asked one day. Nena smiled faintly. Forgiveness isn't for him. It's for us. So we can breathe again. Adesawa, humiliated, fled to London after the scandal. For months, she remained silent. Then she published a memoir titled, Almost Mrs. Olumide. In it, she admitted she once loved Chief but had seen signs of his secrets. I mistook prestige for peace, she wrote. And paid the price for ignoring my instincts. The memoir became a bestseller, sparking debates about truth, ambition, and the price of silence in Nigerian society. Chief Adedeo started a foundation in his late father's name. He began visiting orphanages. He simplified his life, cutting back on luxury and politics. I chased legacy in glass towers, he said in an interview. But legacy lives in flesh, in people. In redemption. One night, at a private dinner, he toasted Ifeoma. To the only person who ever dared to remind me who I was. She raised her glass. To promises kept, even if delayed. 3 years after the scandal, the once infamous monarch estate glowed with quiet dignity. It was no longer a symbol of broken vows, but of second chances. Ifeoma stood on the lawn where she once interrupted a wedding. This time, she wore a graceful white dress, not as a bride, but as the keynote speaker for a girls' leadership summit. Beside her, Chief Adedeo smiled, his hair grayer, his spirit lighter. The crowd stood in applause as she concluded, let no one tell you your pain is too small to matter. And never forget. Sometimes, destiny wears rags before it wears robes. Later that evening, Ifeoma sat alone on the old stone bench behind the estate. A little girl approached her. Ragged. Shy. I heard your story, the girl said. Do you think, someone like me can change? Ifeoma reached for the girl's hand. I was you. And yes, you can. But first, believe it. Then walk into every room like the door belongs to you. The stars blinked above, soft and silver. And somewhere deep in Lagos, a street lamp flickered where another lost girl whispered her own name into the dark. A promise had been born. 2 years had passed. The headlines had long moved on from the scandal that once rocked Nigeria's elite. But in quiet corners of society, among orphanage children, market women, and university halls, her name still stirred awe and courage. Ifeoma Olamide was now a final-year law student and the founder of the Little Star Foundation, named after the pet name Chief Adedeo once gave her. The foundation helped rehabilitate abandoned children and street kids, offering them shelter, education, and mentorship. Every week, Ifeoma visited the same bridge under which she once slept. Not out of nostalgia, but out of duty. She never wanted to forget the ache, the nights without food, or the fear of being invisible. Those memories had become her compass. Chief Adedeo, retired from day-to-day business, had become a quiet philanthropist. He spent most mornings tending to a garden in the Lekki orphanage he funded in Ifeoma's name. Adesewa, having married a Ghanaian diplomat, rarely mentioned her almost wedding. But she once told a journalist, "I dodged a bullet. That wedding wasn't mine to complete, it was fate's way of writing a bigger story." Mama Nena, now lucid thanks to world-class psychiatric care, had become a joyful presence in their new home. She spent afternoons knitting scarves for children at the foundation, humming old lullabies. One sunny afternoon, during a national award ceremony at Aso Rock, Ifeoma was called to receive the Presidential Medal of Honor for Youth Empowerment. As she stood at the podium, glittering under the chandeliered hall, she looked directly into the cameras and said, "I stand here not because I was found, but because I refuse to stay lost. Every abandoned child has a voice, and sometimes it takes a scandal to make that voice heard. My life is not a fairy tale. It is proof that the smallest spark can light a wildfire of change. You don't need a billionaire's blood to build legacy, just their courage to do right." The crowd erupted. In the front row, Chief Adedeo wept silently. He had built oil empires, hosted presidents, and conquered boardrooms. But no legacy ever made him prouder than the barefoot girl who once crashed his wedding and became his heart's greatest redemption. As the national anthem played, Ifeoma looked upward. To the stars. To her future. To the girl she once was, and the woman she had become.